what I was curious about you now, because when I'm listening to you talk about your background, there was a lot of that I tend to lean more towards when it comes to how you been able to maintain your career, but also in an area where I was not familiar with that was actually considered to be a career, which is the theme park plays that you put on, that you direct as well too, which I have no idea how that's done. So, I mean, I have a lot of questions, and I'm kind of like trying to contain myself because there's so much that I'm trying to process right now that I want to get into here. So, I'm hoping that what you can just start with me is that, when you first had started, I know that the intention was to become an actor. That was your goal, but along the way, once you became an actor, what was that gateway that kind of led you into the directing the theme park plays, and among other things that you're doing along the way here too, because that's something that I'm not sure how that gets offered, how you come across that for you to apply for that sort of stuff. So I'm rambling on, as you can tell. There's a lot that I want to ask you, but I'm hoping you can understand where I'm coming from with this here.
Well, I was real lucky, Rob, growing up in Fort Worth. My father, not in this field at all. He was
Right.
into building airplanes and politics, and I was supposed to have gone to be a page in Washington D.C.,
Right.
then go to Harvard and go on into politics, and I did not do that. My father made a terrible mistake when I was about 9 years old. He introduced me to a world champion cowboy. And then
Okay.
he introduced me to another one. And I said, gosh, I'm going to be a cowboy. Well, we had a horse, and we kept it at a stables just outside of Fort Worth in Benbrook. And I met the Cartwrights, fitting name, Cartwrights.
Uh,
And it might ring a bell because Alan Cartwright, one of my good friends, lifelong friends, he was just growing up, but Alan was everything that anybody ever wanted. He had the looks, the height, the build. He was a Marlboro man for a while, but everything he did, he was always doing commercials, and it just inspired me. And I was like, because rodeo is a tough life.
yeah.
And I tried it. I tried it for years. Wasn't any good at riding bulls. I tried fighting bulls. That didn't work either. I said a good horse, but as far as a contestant. So the first time I ever directed, I started as an assistant arena director in high school rodeo, and then went on to state rodeo. But I grew up in the rodeo. Well, I was out there in Benbrook working for the Cartwrights. Alan's father, Aubrey, magnificent man. He knew so much about horses, taught me how to drive a team of horses. Not everybody can say that. They were doing a theme park show. Well, actually, Alan was a gunfighter at one of the large theme parks there in Texas. So I wanted to be that. So 3 years later, I was. He was doing a huge arena show in New Jersey at Great Adventure. They brought me up.
Sounds
I got
familiar.
to, yeah, we were doing Star Spangles and Thrills. I'll date myself. Don't worry, it's coming, but it was probably before you were born. But we were doing these huge theme park shows. So from 17 years of age, I was working in theme parks.
Interesting.
That spills over. So you have to do something while you're waiting for an agent to call you.
Mhm.
So when I went to California in whatever year that was, I lived there for 30 years. I worked at theme parks there because it was great income. We did the first Batman stunt spectacular there,
Mm.
which was huge. And you think of the people that were involved in that show. A stunt man, I was okay. I did really good underwater. I did really good horseback, but the rest of it just, there's so many people that are so good at that. If you looked at that cast that was in the original Batman stunt show that premiered in 1990, stunt coordinator was very, very well known. All those people went on to be really big names in the entertainment, especially in the film industry. Even more so, we did Dueling Pirates stunts show at the MGM. The first year the MGM opened and had the theme park out back.
Okay.
So the names that came out of that show, they're still leading the industry in the stunt world. Oh my goodness. There's some big names that came out of that.
Are you able to
So,
name who they were that you would work
well,
with?
gosh, man, there's a lot of, I don't know if they want people knowing some people are
Oh, I see.
ashamed
Okay, I see.
of the uh, theme park world. Man, all that did was train and give us knowledge that we would use forever. When you look at a fight scene that I put together,
Mhm.
whether it's in a theme park show or film, we know our angles. We just know things because we've did it day in, day out for years after years after years after years. And you can see some of those guys, their films, their stunt fighting is so spot on.
Mhm.
So going back to Texas, I was doing that. Again, Alan Cartwright, all I wanted to do was be like Alan.
Okay.
He was just so inspiring. And then he got Bronco Billy with Clint Eastwood.
I know that
Well,
movie. Yeah.
yeah. So Alan had the horses. Now I was a wrangler. That's all I was. I was just the wrangler. I made sure that the horses were there at 5 o'clock in the morning. They were groomed, they were saddled, they were ready to go. But being around the cast of that film changed my life.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, besides Clint,
Hmm.
Jeffrey Lewis, one of my favorite actors of all times. And if you have not listened to Celestial Navigations, which was a show that he did for a number of years, there's like 3 or 4 albums that are CDs that you can still get. But if you ever saw him do that in person, it was life-changing. So Jeffrey Lewis, Scatman Scrothers, Dan Vadas, Bill McKinney,
Yeah.
all of those Eastwood players.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, all of them have now gone on.
Yeah.
But it was a great eye opener. It helped me zero in. Okay, you're not in the stunt world. I was never going to be one of those names that people would know. I was good, but I was not spectacular. So I zeroed it in on the acting portion. So I went and I studied with James Best in Hollywood. A lot of people don't know James.
That name sounds familiar.
Roscoe from the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, yeah. I know who he is. Yeah. I know
But
who
he
he is.
was, he was also known as a very stage actor and doing very dramatic roles.
Okay.
He directed a lot of those episodes with John Schneider and them. So that helped. He also had their Jack Lucarelli, but I went to the Beverly Hills Playhouse and studied under Milton Katselas for a number of years.
Okay.
And Foresight came from there, Andrew Divoff, all these people that I was hanging around with. So I did whatever I needed to do to have enough money to go to the Beverly Hills Playhouse and learn what it was they were doing. That's when you started going, okay, not only do you need this toolkit, you need to be able to do it differently, and what is going to be unique by how I do it.
Right.
Well, you get a good agent, you're doing all that stuff. It all seemed that you start trying to use it. The theme park really helped all those years, and the shows kept getting bigger. I remember that show that we did in New Jersey in 1978. It was huge at that time, but nothing to Tom. We had Tom in a show called Rangers and Outlaws, Texas Ranger Wild West Experience.
Okay.
Oh, that show, and you're talking
about Zimbrod, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tommy was the lead in that. I was the director. I also was the MC. I've MC'd ever since I can remember, and no one's ever gotten me into the MC world, Rob.
Really?
But something tells me you would like it. I was Southern California DJ of the Year nightclub 4 years in a row.
Okay.
I was in nightclubs. That's how I paid my way. Instead of waiting on tables, I was on stage making audiences go nuts.
But you enjoyed that though. When you first got into it, did you enjoy it, or was it something that kind of developed for you to get to that part?
I had to have security come meet me at the car, walk me in until I was finished, and walk me out, because the crowds, they would come from miles to do what we were doing in nightclubs back then. I loved it. I was God on a microphone back then. It was, you're talking about the voice of God. I was making more money than I could have ever made waiting tables. And it was fun, but I had to do it 5 nights in a row, Tuesday through Saturday. So that was 10 years of my life. But man, it was one, I really liked it, but I realized it was wearing me out. So when you would do your auditions in the daytime, you weren't maybe as good as you were. The whole thing of trying to find an agency that would take you, a manager, and believe me, in 35 years, 40 years, I've tried to do it all. You can't, back then, the big thing was you couldn't be with a franchise agent unless you were SAG. You couldn't be SAG unless you were had done, either gotten Taft or somehow got in SAG.
Yeah.
So there was all of that game, and you have to do it. But I never joined SAG to be a Screen Actors Guild member. In the old days, it really meant something. It did. But all I wanted to do was make movies. And since then, and you're talking about Brett. That's Brett and Tiffany's goal, to make movies and have fun and be around people that you like, you can count on, and that you allow to do what they do best. And Brett does what he does best. He's a great director. He's very fun, but he's very quick. You better not ever slack off on him. When you go to work for Brett, there's no, let me see my script or what line. I mean, he expects you to be prepared and on the ball. So fortunately, all of that stuff leading up to then, wow, we just covered 4 decades, but all of that stuff helps you hone in those skills so that you can deliver for Brett or anybody, but especially for Brett, because he's one of those people. Yeah, you want to do a unique, good character, but for Brett, you want to deliver for him because you want to please him.
Well, so let me ask you about I'm just going to go back a little bit here with what you were commenting before about you getting into directing these theme park show. How does that work out when to do that here? Because I never really understood exactly how someone would take on that kind of responsibility. Are you guys rehearsing and how it's gonna work out with the rigs that you may have to pull off and the stunt work and having the people involved to repeat their lines? I mean, how does that work out in the broad scheme of things for you? Because I would imagine that working on a film set obviously there's a bigger difference there, but to work to that scale where you work in front of a live audience in that kind of capacity and that sort of spectacle, what's the approach that you have to take when taking on that kind of responsibility?
Well, actually, I think it's sometimes even a little more difficult in that world, because you're not going to do it once. You're going to do it 5, 6, 7 times a day, 7 days a week for 8 months or 2 or 3 years. So you have to make sure that it's really, really safe. A lot of the things you don't do, that the heavy jerks and stuff that you try to stay away from. Fighting is one that I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, first in Shotokan karate. Again, trying to figure out how to make those moves and sell them to where people believe that people are in a fight. But I don't know how many live shows I've done. They just kept getting bigger and bigger. So about 7, 8 years ago, I was asked to do a new car show in Tianjin, China. Well, you might not have ever heard of Tianjin. It's up north. That theater seats 6,000 people. And you're going to be completely full 4 to 5 times a day. So you can start doing the numbers. The budget on that live action show was enormous. Okay, you ask how I got into it. I told you I was a gunfighter back when I was a kid at a theme park. Well, naturally, I wanted to be the one that everybody was watching. So if you jumped up and caught a railing in the back, did a back flip down to the lower deck, and then fell down and faked your death. Well, that was really cool. That was fun. Well, if you fall off the building, back then we were hitting mattresses and cardboard boxes, but it was a big wow. Oh, you're the stunt guy. Well, that was fun. So you started doing those, and you get into more stunts. And when we got into the Batman show in 1990, I played the Joker MC. So you play a double part. You're the MC, then you're the Joker. I didn't make it to the Penguin. I was already getting older and wasn't bouncing quite as hard. Besides that, all of those things that I was trying to do that I didn't do well, you start going, okay, well, I'm not going to do that anymore because that hurt. You fight bulls and they're not good at it, you will stop. Skydiving, you have, if you don't, when you start pushing that envelope, I got real good at going, this isn't for me. So as we were getting into about the third year of Batman, I said, and then I went to Las Vegas, we did that show. I would tell them, say, listen, I'm going to want to do something else. I would like to direct this. I did a couple of plays. Then I finally got my opportunity to start directing the stunt shows. There, in those years in the 90s, there was probably 30 to 40 live action shows in the US. Now there's what, 3 real good ones that are big ones, I should say.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
There's a lot of little ones. All the theme parks nearly quit.
Right.
Where they didn't understand maybe how to manage those type of performers, workers' comp claims. There's a great group called Action Horizons, and Peter Nelson is a great guy. They're all out of Australia. They do a lot of the live action shows now worldwide, but a very tight company. They've got it dialed in. They're great to work for. Mirage Entertainment's another one out of California that does a lot of the action shows. They do a good job. So you get in with that. Well, there was only about 3 directors that were doing the majority of these shows all over the world. So I was in Germany. I got into China there for about 12, 14 years, doing show after show after show in those big, enormous amphitheaters in those theme parks. Now their theme parks are huge,
right? And
they fill them up. So you just get better at it. Cars, motorcycles, dune buggies, everything that you can ride, every kind of fight, whether it be kung fu, wushu, karate, taekwondo, all those cowboy fighting, doing Western stunt shows, falling off buildings. Well, it got better and better because we went to porta pits, and then now they make the really nice inflatable pads, really nice. Then we started going to India. I did a lot of shows in India. You just keep doing them and you try to get better and pushing that envelope, making it better, changing the themes up. But you do the soundtracks. The difference with the live shows is if you're the director, you're the stunt coordinator, you're the producer, you're going to write the script usually. So it takes months to put one of those big shows together.
When you write a script for a show like that, is a script writing process very similar to a film, television show, or is there a difference in how you have to come up with the script for a show of that scale?
Good question, Rob. It's all told, and they are action shows.
Okay.
So when you go to back to Peter Alexander was put together the first Batman show. He started the theme park live shows. They did Frankenstein's castle, or Dracula's castle, I think it was. Okay. I was a little kid. Then they did Conan live action show. Oh. Then the A-Team live action show, Miami Vice.
Oh, they actually did one for Miami Vice?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
well,
that was
interesting.
Miami Vice action show at Universal. It's actually
Oh,
where
okay.
Waterworld is now.
Okay.
That changed. That was a paradigm shift for the shows. Oh,
Okay.
wait a minute. We're going to put zip lines coming in here, high falls, air rams, yank backs, fire burn. That's when they started putting all that stuff together.
Okay.
So it all is about action. So when you look at the Batman show, Batman's monologue, here it is. Batmobile, come. Pyro, explosion, people falling, burning. So dialogue, if you do dialogue, it better be very specific, because but
Mm,
you're doing things that everybody already knows. You don't have to introduce anybody. You don't have to give the backstory on Batman, because we all know it.
right.
So it's very easy. Waterworld, that's another one. We already know the story. So you don't have to spend a lot of time in dialogue. What we want to see is the attempt to try to take it over, and all the explosion and the deep fire, and people flying all over the set. That's what you go for. When you're doing these, and especially when you're doing one in a language that I don't speak, that's when it becomes very tricky.
Right.
Because again, it needs to be all about action, but then it has to translate. So you can't call this character Rob unless we have that translated. And what will the audience know that Rob is a name of a male in this show?
Mm,
You get into that whole thing. Your storylines, it all has to they have to understand when they translate it into another language. India, that was one that I struggled with in the beginning, but you catch on. Again, keep it action oriented. Make sure your fights are good. Have plenty of fire effects, and they will come back and see it again and again.
So I'm kind of going off topic here because I'm actually curious because you've been able to direct those type of stage plays here, but does it ever cross your mind, considering the amount of responsibility that you take on, where okay, so you have to have the punchline, you have to have the impact already in motion. So when you're directing that stuff, and then you're going on film sets, and you're either directing something or you're just part of the production in acting capacity. But does it ever cross your mind that because I've been able to direct this scale of a show that had a lot of action to it, I do you feel confident that you're able to translate that to directing that on a film set where what is going to have the good impact for the audience to watch and feel like, holy shit, that was amazing? Or I mean, do you have does that translate to something that you could do on a film set, or is it just completely different where it's not the same as opposed to being like an action director of a high caliber, if you will? If that's a fair question to ask.
It is, and it's one that I have thought of.
Okay.
Rob, I think it would just depend on the movie and how involved. On one of those big sets, we're liable to have a technical crew of 20, 30 people, actors, gosh, 20, 30. Then you have all the production team, the technicians. There's a lot of people. So a lot of it is similar. But when you watch, and Lord knows I've had the pleasure to watch some of these greats direct,
Mhm.
that's what they do best. Again, they're
Okay.
in a zone. I did Babylon 5,
I know
and
that show. Yeah.
Adam Nimoy was the director of that episode.
Oh, Leonard's son, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
cool, cool stuff. Cool stuff. And you watch some of these directors. Brett's another one. Brett, Brett makes it easy to go to him, and he's almost like, I mean, you can go talk to Brett and go, here's what I was thinking, and he'll either go, yeah, let's do that, or he'll go, why don't we try this? Brett's very easy and very approachable, which is great for a director. But yeah, doggone it. Over the years, I've been privileged to work with people that I'm in awe of.
But would you ever consider, if given the opportunity and the time, resource, I mean, if everything were to go well, for you to be able to pull it off, would you ever consider shooting a film of that type of scale as far as like action is concerned, because you had the experience to do that on a day-to-day basis in front of a crowd where everything has to be on point? But do you think if you have the opportunity to do that on a film set, would you take it, and do you think you'll be able to pull it off?
I do. I've been an assistant director, but I was a very engaged. And then something, I think my next step is going to be a second unit director,
Right.
where especially you're doing an action sequence, which I'm very comfortable doing. But to give more confidence, we have done so much video, and even what I'm doing here in San Francisco. I mean, I'm on television all the time. The cameras in directing that's in front of me.
Right.
I think it'll be, and I have a drawer full of storylines. I'm working on a script now that I really like. I hope that in the years to come that I'm able to put those together and get those done and have the opportunity to direct one of them.
So, so explain to me about when you're working with Brett, then, with some of the action sequences, like for example, like Rodeo Thief. That was the first film you had worked with B-22 and Brett and all, because of your introduction with Tom Zimbrod. So, were you a part of the stunt coordinator aspect of it here too? Considering your background, did Brett bring you in on what should we do to take on this scene where your character is going to be dragged by a horse? What's the best way to go about it? Or with throwing a punch, what's the best angles for us to take for the audience to see, the hero throw the punch or take the punch? Like, was there anything like that you had in discussing with Brett about how to go about that, or were you just simply there just to act, and then he handled whatever else with whoever's going to be handling that?
I was there to act.
Okay.
Tom Zimbrod was taking care of all the other things.
Okay.
Naturally, if he had a question, I'd do anything in the world for Tommy. Tommy and I go back
Yeah.
decades and have been through things that Lord knows. You could write a whole novel off that. But Tommy set all that up. Tommy was doubled me for the drag.
Mm.
We had done drags together
Right.
in a show for many years. So it's something very simple, and Tommy executed it, and it went very well. And the fight scenes, they did that. Tom Holland loves to be physical.
Yeah.
Have you seen Operation Overlord?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. I did see it.
Brett set the fight up. That was all Brett.
Yeah.
So, but Tom Holland is great to work with, and it's so fun working with him because we gave it our absolute 100%, each of us, and it was so much fun.
One thing about you guys working together here, because that's one thing that I loved about with your performance, both you guys performance together on Rodeo Thief, is when it came to the physicality, from your character and his character's perspective, that you guys sell. I mean, I know you sell very well because considering your background, but Tom Hallam, on the other hand, is a guy that can really sell taking the punch and throwing the punch, which obviously helps, with the execution and the overall packaging of the fight. So when you work with him, though, at least the first time around, was it easy? Could you see from there that he's on point, he knows what needs to be done? Or from your experience working him on the first time around, did you see that there he's probably a little rougher on the edges that you need to work on a little bit better to take on that physicality when it comes to the characters' action beats in the stories?
I had never met Tom before the first day of shooting.
Okay.
We were setting things up, and we had our first scene. He came in the room, and it was a great chemistry, and it was like fireworks going off. No, Tom he knows exactly what he's doing. Okay. And I've had the pleasure to work with him enough times, and you see different roles. Meteor, I love what he did in Meteor.
Yeah, so
I thought he was great in Meteor.
Yeah, he was.
I like him in all of his roles. But I really like Rodeo Thief. Yeah. Honor Among Thieves.
I saw that movie too. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he did. I liked him there, but Meteor, that was such a different character, and that's what's fun. And Brett allows actors to go different places. If you looked at just the westerns with Brett, I hope that each one of those characters you go, yeah, that's a completely different character.
Yeah, that's what I got from your just about everyone's performances here, especially with you, because I've commented before with your acting that that and I hope when I remember when I was doing the review for Rodeo Thief that it didn't come off the wrong way when I say over the top, because that's not, I didn't mean to be disrespectful by any means, but it did cross my mind when I said that. I was like, I don't think it's probably the best word to use, but considering your character in the film, I thought it kind of got to that point at certain scenes, but it was good though, because I thought it balanced out with the dark overtone that the movie had, and adding that element of like of charisma, if you will. That was what I thought was very much needed in the movie, and it definitely balanced itself out very well. But when I see your performances, though, like I mentioned before, with Rodeo Thief, I thought was a great performance. I loved your performance in Meteor, and I really do mean that. I thought with what you had done in that film, because I remember when I first talked to Brett about it. This is around the time I think Meteor was just released onto, I think, Tubi, if I'm not mistaken, and then later on it was released on DVD. But he had mentioned that before, that this is going to be a starring role for Robert Keith. Check that out. Let me know what you think. And then when I saw, I was like, this is actually really good. Now I was honest because I sent him a message. I said, hey, I saw the movie. I think I liked it, but I have to watch it again, because I guess because I was expecting something to be more of like a standardized disaster film, and it's the polar opposite of that. And he did tell me in advance, but I don't know, I still had it in my mind that, oh, it's going to be something to within the scale of B-22, but it was the exact opposite of all that. But I thought that with what you guys were able to pull off with that movie, really had impressed me, because one of the riskiest things that a director can do is long takes. But if you do a long take, it can be a very daunting task, where you are having to remember the lines, know where your marks are, and then know what the next steps are going to be. And not once did it ever cross my mind that that there was I didn't pick up anything along the way that I could remember that was I would say a flaw in that scene. In fact, that actually was one of my favorite scenes. When I even messaged Brad, like, that scene was beautiful. It was like 7 minutes straight. He's like, yeah, it was all in one take. And I was, that's fucking incredible, because what you guys did right there was amazing. You were great. Forgive me, the other actress that played the girl in the film, her name escapes me right now, but she was also fantastic in that scene as well too. So I think a lot of the strengths that you guys had carried in that scene really reflected on the impact that the overall story had, because that's kind of like the crux of where everything kind of dies down, and you have this moment with the characters, and then boom, the story picks up from there. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I
That's
think
that's my favorite tangent. And just like you, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh no, I don't think I like this. I really did. And
but why was that for you? Why did you feel that way the first time around?
well, actors, we don't like to watch things that we do anyway. But I was worried because I had never done a character like that one, and
Right.
I will love Brett Bentman for life for that one. Absolutely, is the most fun I ever had in my entire life. To try to work that character and go to the places, and especially that dark place. And that scene is my favorite as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure Brett told you that was one take. It was
Yeah.
also the first take.
Yeah, that's what you told me too. Yeah.
And when you talk from an actor standpoint, being in the moment, I was there. I was there.
Yeah.
I lived it. I loved the dialogue,
Yeah.
and it flowed. I mean, and we're doing a lot of pages in a day.
Yeah.
That was a lot of dialogue, but it just flowed. It happened. It came from a nice organic place. And when he goes to those dark places, and when what he was talking about, it's not too different than what one might think, especially in what we're going through right now
Right.
as a civilization.
It's funny though. Actually, no, it's funny. What I meant to say was that what I wanted to ask you, now that you brought this up about that particular scene and what you were going through. But Did you guys have time to rehearse that scene ahead of time, or were you rehearsing on your own? And then again, the actress name escapes me right now, but did she rehearse on her end? And then when you guys were on set, boom, that's when you guys were pretty much hitting it off at that point.
Yeah, there was, again, you find out where she came from, and you find out about the wife
Right.
on from Liam's standpoint, and that you don't I don't know, it's not easy to go there.
Right.
So we didn't really rehearse that. We had our DP Scott was doing a great job trying to figure out, and of course there was all the mechanics of the gun, the rifle,
Yeah.
and the glass, and Tom Zimbrod was working on that, and the sound. Everybody was trying to make that happen, and we were lucky, and it did.
You know what? You know what movie I keep going back to of Brett's that I didn't realize how many times I may have I think I lost count, and I'm not making this up when I'm saying this here, but I've as many times I've seen Rodeo Thief, which I've seen it quite a few times, and Honor Among Thieves. I've seen Outlaws Buckle, I think 3 times. But the one film I keep going back to the most was Buckskin. And one of the things that I'm still trying to figure out what it is I like about the movie, because I remember when I first saw it, and I told this to Brett too, that my first reaction after I saw the film was like, "What did I just watch?" But again, it wasn't to be negative. It was more like, "What did I just? What did I
just happened?"
Right. It was pretty much like that. And then
Yeah.
I literally would put it back on again and thankfully it's a pretty tight film. So I was able to go back, watch it again from the beginning until the end. And then something about that film, for whatever reason, it starts to grow on me more and more when I watch it. And when I go back to watch it, I always pick up on the little details about what it is I may have missed the first, third, fourth time around, that I pick up on the next set of viewings here. And the one thing that I actually picked up the most, I'm going to say my later viewings, which I forgot where it was at that point, but really was your performance. And here's why I felt that, in my opinion, and I'm sure you may have a difference in here, but with where you may come from with this, I actually think your performance in Buckskin was possibly your best, because you have a balance of like that that asshole of a character, and then you have the moment of like you have a soft spot, especially for your grandson, and then you have that aggression that goes with that character, and then you go right back into the sympathetic side. And I'm not saying that wasn't like that for your character in Meteor, but I felt like Meteor was pretty consistent across the board, whereas your character, and forget me, as many times as I've seen the film, I always forget the character's name, but your character in Buckskin, it has a big fluctuation of all these emotional ranges, that you're angry, you're a dick to a lot of people, and then all of a sudden you start getting emotional, but then you're not sure if you go on the side with the guy, because his intentions were not in a good place, but the what good intention he had, there were stipulations behind these intentions. And then you come to realize, without revealing the ending there for anyone, that there was a lot more that was involved, which he was fully aware of once it got to that point. And then you're wondering, why did he go through that in the first place? So there's a lot that I take away from that character, apart from Zembrod's character too, which is another great performance in my opinion. But for me, that I felt like was, out of the films I've seen that you've done with Brett, that to me is the one that stuck out the most as far as like your best performance. But I mean, I'm not sure how you feel about, to you, what would be considered your best performance, but I feel like that was where you really peaked as far as what you're able to pull off, and as far as your acting arsenal is concerned.
That's Brett. I mean, he created that character, and I don't think Brett was thinking it was going to go exactly where it did either. And so you have this guy that it's his world, everybody's just living in it,
Right.
and it's just about the dollar and making the corporate happy.
Right.
And his son, when you hear that your son died, well,
Yeah.
and then the grandson tips him over into a spin that he has no control of. Everything that he controlled, he has now lost. That scene with the fortune teller.
Yeah. I love that scene, by the way. That was a good scene.
That was a fun scene. And then the one in the church,
Yeah.
that was tough,
Yeah.
Rob. that was tough. And Anthony was the DP on that one. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people in that in the crew on Brett's sets, but that was, that you have to feel safe going somewhere like that.
Mhm.
And that was an amazing day for me as an actor to be able to. I'd never done that on film before, and to be able to open yourself up and expose yourself. That was very rewarding for me.
Was Brett as strict with you as he was with Zembrod about sticking with the lines on the script, or did he give you a little freedom to, improvise if it was necessary?
I do just exactly what Brett writes.
Okay.
I
Is that are you talking about for this film for Buckskin, or are you talking for
all of them,
all of them? Okay.
all of them. I
Okay.
try to do exactly what, because he's a good writer, and when he writes something for you to say, it means something. Oh, I'm not saying we hadn't it maybe said it close to what he said, and he moves on, and we're good. But no, I don't. I try to say it just like he wrote it.
Do
As
you
always.
do you feel like when you since you've been working with Brett, I mean, it's quite obvious that you've been able to expand in the last, I would say, year or so, then as far as acting is concerned. Because again, I haven't seen everything you've done, but I would imagine that within the last year or so, you've probably been able to do a whole lot more as far as your acting range is concerned. You probably have done throughout your career. Is that kind of a fair assessment to make?
Rob, COVID is the
Right.
reason for it.
Right.
In 20, coming into 20, I was on a show. I left Lake Tahoe on January 25th from doing a show there. I was on my way to China to do
Yeah.
2 shows, India,
Yeah.
and then move on and all of that stopped. My whole world, as far, I was always on the road. The year before, 19, I spent 7 months in China.
Straight.
Yeah, I thought
Really?
my wife was. I think I came home once, but yeah, I think I was sure my wife was going to get rid of me, but I worked all the time doing live action shows, and it's been that way for 18 years, show after show after show, in somewhere. And when I was with a good agency back in LA, and then we had a great pilot episode with Dan Aykroyd for a TV show called CCPD, and for some reason they didn't do the series. So after that agency, they kind of let me start dropping away. An agent is an actor's best or worst nightmare, best dream or worst nightmare. If they're not getting you out and you're not going anywhere, it's tough to get representation that will work as hard as you want to work. And to me, all I want to do, my life is still evolving and changing. And all I'm doing full time is I'm going to go back to stage for 22. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do any of the live stuff anymore unless it's something I really want to do. But at this stage of my life, Brett and Tiffany opened a door that had been closed for a long time. And I agree with exactly what you said. And I think Tom Zembrod, I can't say it enough. Tommy, thank you. Stacy Lee, the wardrobe and costumer that works with Brett. When you look at Buckskin, if you actually look at the costumes, the colors, the blends, Stacy did a wonderful job on that. She always does, but I thought Buckskin, especially the different things that she had for me to wear, just helped build a character that was memorable. Honor Among Thieves, again, that was Honor Among Thieves. That character with that dialect that I came up with from wherever so much
He
fun.
was from
So
Mississippi, wasn't he? Was that
yeah,
where? Yeah, okay.
yeah. But so my life complete in 14 months, thanks to B-22.
Right.
And I hope someday Brett and Tiffany will have me back again, because I adore both of them as human beings and for what they do. And they want to make movies.
Yeah.
And that is the goal, to make movies. Not everyone is going to be that you're the best.
Right.
And shoot, man, I don't know how many movies he did last year, but they're always, it's funny. We have so many movie critics now, and I appreciate yours. And you made my day when you did Rodeo Thief.
Oh.
I loved it, Rob. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for saying
And you
that.
get it. Meteor is another one. It is a post-apocalyptic
Mhm.
10 years after the incident.
Right.
And it's what we became and the story of that. And loneliness, and things are messed up. How do you get out of it? And then giving up. That scene where I'm thinking about committing suicide. I'll try not to give it away.
Yeah.
That was another one of those Brett Bittman nail biters, because that was so intense. Yeah, fun stuff.
I'm curious about, you mentioning about how you've been able to travel around the world doing these stage shows. Um how difficult is it for you to, be away from home? Because you mentioned you were in China for 7 months straight. You came home one time, and you mentioned your wife briefly about not being home for that extended period of time. But how difficult is it for you to be able to go from one place to the next, then to the next, and then come back home, recharge, and then move on again to the next? Because you've been doing it for, I think it's almost fair to say, for well over 2 decades at this point. But
Yeah.
does it become stressful for you to, do you reconsider, maybe it's a little too much right now, I should just slow down, let me just focus on this? Because again, if it wasn't for COVID happening, you would still be doing that. You probably would have never met Brett and Tiffany as a result of that happening there. And of course, with Tom being your connection to that, does it ever become a little over to become too stressful at certain points where you just feel like, I gotta stop? Or do you really love it that much that you've been going on, I would say, almost virtually nonstop since kind of you started there? Is that kind of a fair assessment to make for what you're doing?
Absolutely. And I am, and it is right now.
Okay.
I've been here for 3 months,
Okay.
and this one, I think it's time to do what I enjoy, and I don't need to keep doing this. And it's not, now I married late in life, and she knew what I was doing. And
Mhm.
it takes a toll on the family. But
Right.
yeah, we're everything's great, and hopefully we're gonna make more movies, and maybe do stage. I did stage. It's been a while, but I did Streetcar
A Streetcar
in
Named Desire?
Lafayette,
Okay.
and I played Stanley, and another one of my absolute best times of my entire life. And to think they were supposed to be like a 3-week run. We did 7. They wanted to go longer, and I couldn't. I would still be doing it today. I had so much fun. Those people would come in there every night, and you would get to go through that. It was just so much fun. And I love the stage. Fun.
Do you like it more so than you do working on set, on a film set? Or do you have a preference of which one you prefer over the other?
My happiest days in my life have been on a film set.
Okay.
And if I could, I don't care if you want me to be craft services, I want to be on a film set. I have a friend that has had a career, and he's about to pop with a whole new career as an actor. But he's the one that brought me in on a set and said, "Listen, I want you to be the assistant director." And I said, "I don't know what all the things that I like to know what I'm doing.
Right.
And I said, I'm not sure I know everything that an assistant director. And he says, you'll do the schedules. You're going to do the quiet on the set. And he's the one that pushed me into that. And I really liked that. But everybody came up and went, you're such a good first AD. I didn't know you did that. I didn't either. But it was just fun. A movie set is a great place. Great place.
For you, what's the most stressful aspect about filmmaking? Because you know, I believe when you're saying that it's a great place. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying I don't believe you, but there's a part of me that wonders though, is there any part of the process that for you that you probably have more like a love-hate relationship where you probably could do without, or if you could avoid it, you would do it at any cost? Do you have anything like that when it comes to the filmmaking process that sticks out for you in that
No,
regard?
Rob, no, I don't. I remember back when we were doing the TV shows, the series. I was lucky enough to do a lot of the Western um, series. And I remember, when people go, I can't believe we've been here 14 hours and we're that, and we're going to get meal penalties, I hope, and I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care.
So you
This
really do
is,
love it that much? Like
I
you really
do.
have no you don't have any sort of disdain for something about that process that
I
comes to
do.
mind? Okay.
I do. The end of the set, end of the show.
Really?
I
Okay.
hate it.
Really?
I hate when they go, that's a wrap for Robert. Yeah. I hate those words.
Really?
I don't want to rap. I want it to go on. It's living a fairy tale. What career can you possibly come up with where every show you're a completely different person with a completely different background? You're a doctor, you're a detective, it's living out dreams and trying to make them creative, memorable, and fun.
Have you ever worked on like as far as pre-production is concerned or post-production is concerned? Have you worked in that capacity at all when it comes to that aspect of the filmmaking process?
Not on anything big, no.
Okay. Do you like that part of the process?
I do, and I think it's not anything different than I've done on some of the large shows, the action shows, the live action shows. It's hard to imagine, but when you're talking about that, they're going to have a budget of 5 to 10 million or more.
Mm.
That's a lot of responsibility to put on you to handle everything up to the opening, and then for it to be able to operate successfully year after year after year. But it's all that is fun because you can come back and that show is going to grow like any live theater.
Mhm.
Where we started from is going to change as it metamorphosizes throughout the years. The car show that I put up 7 years ago, which is still running today in Tianjin, you look at it now, shoot, the drivers are so much better. And I'll tell you that one of my favorite live shows. Now I've done some great shows. We did a show for Hershon Family Entertainment at Silver Dollar City,
Okay.
Branson, Missouri, and we great producers. We came up with a Wild West show that was very intimate in a single ring, like a circus ring, where people were around you for 180 degrees of that. And we did something that is very much had a piece of my heart in it. It ran for 5 years, sold out. It can never be done again. It was once in a lifetime to be able to do that in history and it be that successful. And those are the moments that you take with you through life.
When you're doing those shows though, has there ever been an opportunity where someone has come out and say, hey, we love what you've done with these live shows, around the world? I've seen some shows. You've done pretty good at this stuff. Would you be able to take that and do, I mean, maybe like has anyone ever come to you and asked you, hey, would you be able to do that, but for a Broadway show or something of that sort, something in that capacity. Like, has something ever like that come up to you where someone has offered something of that scale to be able to bring that onto, you know, Broadway? If you, I'm trying to be very careful how I ask, because I don't want to make it seem as if it's a generic thing, but I don't know any other way of going around and asking that. So if it makes any
No, I
sense.
know exactly what you're talking about, Rob.
Okay.
I don't, people have, but usually they don't have any money.
Okay.
They're trying to do stuff. When we were doing the car show in Tianjin, I actually showed Brett, because we had a jumbotron in center stage. So we created a movie that cuts in and out like a lot of the live action shows.
Right.
If you ever saw Phenomenal Lights Motor Speed Show at Disney, where you see it on the jumbotron, then it as they exit stage right, then it comes out on the stage and it's actually in front of you live.
Mhm.
We did the same thing. Well, to shoot that film, we were on the streets of China, and I love guerrilla filmmaking. I do.
Okay.
There's a high that you get off doing that when you know you could get in trouble and put in jail. But we shot this whole movie. I say whole movie. It was about 12 minutes, but we did all of that with all the cars, all the fighting. And so we were able to bring that to cinema, and it's believable, and it's on the big screen in one of my favorite videos.
So when you are shooting, oh, I'm sorry, when you're directing that, is there a part of the process that you feel like you've gotten better with, as far as, managing the set, managing the, the choreography and all that stuff? Because I mean, you, from what I'm gathering here, when you're telling me before, you handle virtually all aspects of it. But do you feel like there's something that from where you first had started doing that if you look back on it now, you say, "Holy shit, I was really green back then, but I've come a long way." Like, is there a part of you that looks back at that and thinks about, where you started and where you started from, where you are with it now, and the amount of improvement you made, the evolving into a better director of that sort, as far as all the other technical aspects of it too, that wasn't available 20 years ago, that's available now, that you're taking on new challenges? Is there a lot of that you think about, how much has changed and how you have evolved from, I said before, from where you started, where you are with it now?
Oh, absolutely. That's part of growth. The one thing that is hard, that I think, Rob, you get older, you have that little voice inside of you,
Mm.
and I trust that voice with my life. I know when, like I said, I started learning when it said, you really don't need to do this anymore. Okay, I would just stop. It helps you know people. When I meet somebody, I usually get my first impression is spot on. So like when you talk about the first time I met Tom Holland that day on Rodeo Thief, no, I knew right off the bat that he and I were going to have that chemistry. And I hope he feels the same way, because I love working with him.
He has a great chemistry on screen.
It would be fun to be his partner instead of his enemy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything, Brett, but it would be fun to be teamed up with Tom.
It'd be fun if you guys would be like a buddy cop or type of film of that sort, two opposite spectrums working together alongside with one another. That'd be something I think I see you guys do very well together, if that would ever come to fruition. So if Brett can make that happen.
He gives a lot as an actor, and he's a lot of fun. Tom Zimbrod, you've seen us on film together in many of these, but people always talk about, wow, what is that chemistry? You guys are so like in real life. And yeah, because we are in Operation Overlord. You've seen Operation Overlord?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Boy, that was a stretch. German is not an easy language, but Tommy and I, we have some great scenes in there.
Yeah.
But that little voice that you get, the older you get, it's not always a good thing to have, because you can tell whether just over the years, before you're casting for this, now when you're casting for those shows, I want to know that you have the ability, but you have the attitude, and that you're not going to go, they're not going to spend all this money to buy a visa for you and a $2,000 airline and go to get everything, and then your personality is not going to fit in. That's something a director, not only do you have to bring all those people together, same thing as Brett, but you have to mix all those personalities from crew to talent. It's not an easy task, but I hope at this stage of my life that I'm better at finding the ones that will build that team and provide the desired result.
I was thinking about with what you just said right there about having to in a lot of ways just filtering out who would be good for the production that you're going to be working on. For you though, was that part of the process that never changes, as far as like, because I can't imagine what it's like for you to work with people in different parts of the world that let's say you had a great relationship with a crew out in, out in the West Coast where you are right now, and then you're going to go to China, and it may not be the same crew you've worked with before. So having to develop that relationship again from scratch, is it difficult for you to do that? Or do you have a pattern that works out? Like, so I know that what I'm going to focus on is this, and I'm going to talk to these guys first, get a feel for where they are, and then I'm going to talk to these guys over here, get a feel for where they are, and then from there I will be able to filter out what they can do, what they can't do, and then I'm going to assign them to do the following things. Like, do you have a process of how that works out for you to be able to get things moving quickly, considering the amount of time you have to prepare for those big shows?
I do. Most of them are a multinational cast. So you might have Ukrainian, Russian, Australian, Thai, and just the mere fact of trying to get translated to them and their language.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have 3 translators trying to tell them what you just said, but it's not me. I think just like a film director, you see what their talents are. So yeah, we have a script. That's a great roadmap to get us started. But until I can see what either you have in your abilities or the ability to learn, how long is it going to take you to drive a car? Well, if you pick it up real quick, for instance, we do a lot of the 2-wheel driving. That's very popular. I think it's been done a lot, but if you pick that up in 2-3 days, great, it's in the show. If we're looking at 4 weeks down the road and we've caved in 3 cars while you try to learn how to do that, no. So you have to find people that can do that. Some people, we have some performers that are go-to performers. Tom Zimbrod, there is nobody that ever came on to one of the shows that I ever did anywhere in the world that gives more than Tom Zimbrod, especially if you have animals in it. And I usually always have animals, not always. I love having animals. We did a show called the Pinkerton Man, and we had one miniature horse, but it had a pig in it. Tommy is going to personally make sure that every one of those animals is taken care of. He just gives 100%. There's a personality. So if you're in a bind somewhere and you need a heavy hitter, Tom, can you come to Missouri? Tom, can you come to India? That's the way I was. People would, when they were in a bind, they call Robert, and I would come in and, what do you need done? Okay, got it. Let's go.
Right. So has Tom always been have you ever done that with Tom before, where, you're out of the country or another part of the country here in the States, where you had said, hey, I need someone like ASAP, can you come out? Has that happened on a frequent basis?
Absolutely, multiple times.
Okay.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, ting, ting, ting. Yeah. Tommy saved my backside a number of times.
So when you first when you're working with, well, let me ask you, when did you guys first meet together? You guys actually meet working those stage shows, or you guys met beforehand and then got along, then got into working the stage
Hey,
show together?
okay, you brought this up. I didn't.
Okay.
So Tommy can't be mad. Actually, it's kind of funny. Tom auditioned for me one year, and he says I didn't select him. What is also just like it is in film, I can say, oh, yeah, I would like this person, this person, this person. The people paying the check always have the last deal.
Say.
So if they go, no, we're going to have this one. Okay, that works for me. You can fight them sometimes. Anyway, we passed on Tommy that year. Move forward 3 years, he went on and had landed a big show in Houston. Several years later, he worked for me, and once I knew him, I want Tom Zimbrod around me anytime I have a difficult task or the most fun task in the world. I would always want Tom Zimbrod on my team.
So, and you guys known each other for over 20 years at this point now, is that right?
At least, yes.
Okay. And when you first worked with him, then because I mean, again, this is one thing about that I've learned about Brett's movies early on, where I remember, I think it was I think it might have been Copper. Yeah, it might have been Copper Bill. Yeah, it was Copper Bill actually. When I was watching the credits, I saw Tom's name, just like Tom Zimbrod, gaffer, Tom Zimbrod, stunt coordinator, Tom Zimbrod, actor, Tom Zimbrod. It was like everything but the the delivery guy was what he was. So
that's him.
So, and then I had asked, we talked about that for a little bit when I was conversing with Brett. He's like, Tom does everything, even when he was working on Buckskin, he was pretty adamant about having him just, stick with this. Don't worry about picking up the trash. Someone will do that, but I need you to focus on this.
He's going to pick the trash up anyway, right. Rob. Right. You can tell him not to, but he's going to pick the trash up. I know. I've seen him do it for 20 years.
So, well, I mean, again, that's what I'm saying, that because Tom strikes me as someone that really is extremely reliable for you to get the job done. And, even with Buckskin, it was supposed to be Tom Hallam's part, but Tom Hallam ended up getting the part in Fear of the Walking Dead. And then, he called Zimbrod and said, hey, I need you to come in for this part. And he was available like that. And it turned out to be his best performance that I've seen him so far. And then, so, Tom Zimbrod to me has been one of those guys that is like, I just don't know. I remember when I saw Whitetail, which I thought he was great. And then I saw then I saw Copper Bill, then I saw Buckskin. Then he did another horror movie that came out not too long ago. I forgot what it was called. It was something about, it was him as a werewolf. So he's been doing a whole lot when it comes to the acting department, and he's worked in virtually in every aspect of it when it comes to what every actor would dream of doing. In my mind, he seems he's been able to do a little bit of that. So he's kind of like a one man, like a Swiss Army knife is what I meant to say. When it comes,
that's a great explanation.
Yeah. So when you're working with him, though, it's clearly obvious. I can see it in your face that you think very highly of him when you work with him. So when you are, when he brought you in for, to work on Rodeo Thief, did you question at all about what it was he was recommending, or once he called you and said, hey, there's something that I think could work out here for you, and you trusted his very offer right off the bat without even questioning it? Was it that kind of like a
absolutely
direction? Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about how you are, how you've been going in between acting on TV shows, film sets, and then doing stage shows where you're directing that and among other things too. So how have you been able to transition going from one particular aspect of your career to the other, and then be able to have an opportunity to step away from it if you needed to, or if you wanted to, and then go back into, let's say acting again? Like, how does that work out for you since you've been doing this here? Because it seems like you've been playing both sides of the field pretty much since you started.
I have, and it really, because the live shows they get behind just like everything else does. Okay. They, the install behind, especially when you're building one of those theaters, there's so many weather. There's so many things that can delay that. I have booked back to back so many times, and then they overlap. And the last big show I did in China, they had to bring in another director to finish the job because they were 3 months behind. I stayed as long as I could, but I can't not do the show that they contracted me 2 years ago to do. So they had to bring a director in, and we worked together a week. He is a very great, good director, but then he finished the show off because you had to move on. But you ask how you do it, it's a hat. You wear that hat. We're going to switch and do this. But my heart is going to take this film hat. Since I was a little boy till now, that hat is the desired attire for me in the future.
I'm curious about, what your with your taste in film. Do you have like a favorite movie that comes to mind that always resonates with you, that hits you in the same spots every time you watch, that you never get bored of? Like, is there a film that comes to mind is that film that sticks out in mind for that?
I'm a big fan of Lonesome Dove.
I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
You've never seen
I
Lonesome
don't
Dove?
think I have. I'm pretty sure I may. I like to
Robert
say that I
Duvall.
did. Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah. It was a TV miniseries. Lonesome Dove, memorable characters that changed television with that show. I think that's a good one. Tommy Lee Jones and
Oh, I have. I've never seen. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
that was like a 4 out. It's like a 5 episode miniseries, something of that sort, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that was like in the early 2000s, wasn't it?
I think it was before then.
Was it? Okay, maybe I'm confusing with something
But
else.
that's one that resonates. There's in my arsenal that I carry, because remember, most of the televisions that I have working as I go around the world don't have any English channels. My favorite year. Do you know this film? Let's see. I love old films.
Is it Italian?
Peter O'Toole, my favorite year.
No, I don't think I've heard of that movie.
I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big Cagney fan.
I like Cagney. Yeah.
James Cagney.
Yeah.
When you do that, but Tommy Lee Jones, I think does a great job, and especially in Lonesome Dove. Robert Duvall knocked it out of the park. Yeah, he did The Godfather. He did all these other, the great Santini. He's done all of those pictures. But in Lonesome Dove, he's absolutely memorable, and that's what it's about. When we're talking about Meteor. I hope people can but if they were just in it, Brett, everybody that's seen the film say, this is not about a meteor hitting the earth. This is the aftermath of that. Hopefully people can relate with Liam somehow and understand his journey.
Right.
That, has a tragic end, but that's making a memorable character. You talk about Buckskin, that one. I was taking Brett's character and trying to give you again a paradigm shift where a person is here, and because of the events drives him to be a completely different person in a matter of moments.
What's the most difficult part of the acting process? Like, do you have a hard time in having, or do you need to take your time to prepare for a role, especially like with a character like Liam in Meteor, or even with again your character in Buckskin? Is there a certain preparation you have to start off with here to be able to get into that mode for the character, or is it pretty easy for you to be able to get into that? Because I know before, in the past you've mentioned that you never really got a chance to work on that aspect of your acting, and then that being one of the very first time where you're able to use a part of your arsenal that was rarely ever used, if at all, that were able to portray these characters in a much more sympathetic fashion, even though the characters themselves, with the exception of Liam, of course, may not have been so sympathetic. But is there something about your preparation that you find difficult because you've never had to do that before, or was it easy for you to get into that moment for the characters?
Doing all the TV shows, unfortunately back then, and when you're a day player, you don't have enough dialogue
Right.
to do the dialogue. I did Wild Bill for Walter Hill, phenomenal director, and
Yeah.
God, what a joy it is to say, yeah, I worked for Walter Hill. My line is with Christine Applegate, and it's so short and uh, so little on the big scheme. But that's what all those parts were. Then you get lucky and you get where you get to have a monologue with somebody. And I did a couple of movie of the weeks where you got to have dialogue with somebody. Okay. But then when you start talking Captiva Island with Ernest Borgnine, the second film I'd done with Ernest, you're working with one of an Academy Award winner, a legend of the screen. Man, you want to have your stuff together when you go get in, sit down opposite him. Then you start seeing, oh, okay, this is it. This is it. What I don't think I ever had a character that was so complete until Brett came along. I think Rodeo Thief, I understood who that person was. The dialogue was there. Right. Opposite Tom Hallam. So I was lucky that all of those gears put together, and I loved it. I really did. All the way up to the dragging scene. I mean, I loved it. I felt good. That scene right before they put the rope around the neck. I mean, that was in the moment we were going. Now I did double one of his lines that wasn't in there. So I am guilty of it. It's not like I'm exact, but it was funny. That is what you live for as an actor, is to be in it and go.
So, but when you're preparing for a character like in Buckskin, and also with the character in Liam for Meteor, having to expand on those emotional beats, is it difficult for you to do that? Because again, like I said before, from what I can gather, the previous roles you played, you never really had to do that, at least not to that extent.
No.
So, is it difficult for you to get into that, or are you able to kind of find that headspace? I'm going to get into it, and we're good to go from there.
I think that fortunately, and I had Tom Zimbrod to rehearse with. Tommy helped me rehearse for Rodeo Thief, which helped. Then when we started getting into those other films, he was too busy, and I was able to do it. But Liam, yeah, that took a little. It took some soul searching in Buckskin. Yeah, I've never done something that took as much work as that one, or Liam. If you go back and you look at all the parts I did, most of the time I played a psycho, and a heavy, and somebody that went around killing people. And there's just, it wasn't that. And then Out in 50 with Mickey Rourke and all those people, that character, they allowed me to build that. And when I went and auditioned for the director, Scott Lee, when he saw me that day, I said thank you, and I was still all hyped up, adrenaline and shaking. And when I left the building, the assistant came running out and she goes, "Mr. Keith, come back. The director wants to see you again." I went in and he says, "You've got the job." He says, "I know we're not supposed to do that, but I've never seen anybody do it like what you just did." And then we did it in the movie. And if you like Psycho, if you haven't seen that, it's on IMDb. You have to go to Robert Keith 2, because there was 4. Now there's just 2 of us. But Brian Keith's father is Robert Keith. So if you go on IMDb, which all actors are judged by now, all actors, your worth is now by IMDb star rating. That's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mine is Robert Keith 2 for you and all your viewers if they want to go look at and see photos. I've tried to add a lot of photos in there to entertain and make it help people go see it. But you just hope to have roles like Brett provided me where you needed to put that much work into a character.
Right.
Stanley, when I did Streetcar, 6 weeks before I really had him dialed in and knew what my version of him was going to be. And Brett's, we made some pretty quick transitions. We shot all 5 of those movies within 14, 15 months. So
Yeah.
you were moving and rocking and rolling, and a lot of dialogue. So you have to know your dialogue, and then hopefully build a character that's worth remembering.
I'm curious about your introduction with the entertainment industry, because you had mentioned something earlier in the conversation where when you got into SAG, nowadays it seems like people who are trying to get into SAG have different reasons behind that weren't necessarily the same as it was for everyone else in your time wanting to become an actor and getting their SAG card. For I would probably assume you mean by more like truer reasons for wanting to earn that card. So, considering how things were back then and how the industry is now, I'm not sure how involved you are with it nowadays, but uh, it may seem like a silly question to ask, and I think it may be a silly question to ask you. But what's the biggest thing that you've noticed the most about the trajectory for actors in the industry now um, that is that's different from what it was back then when you first got in, and seeing the evolution of how the industry has changed, removing the streaming platforms, and how television now has become a little bit more acceptable for Hollywood actors to now be in part of these television productions now, because 20 years ago that would not have been the case. But when you're looking at it now, from where you were back then and where you are with it now, what's something that sticks out for you that for a fact, like, okay, this is never gonna be the same, because when I first started, it was like this. Now that when I'm in the business now, it's not like that anymore. Like, what's for you that shift and change with the industry that you think is the one that sticks out the most for you?
When I started, Rob, you had to know what an actor does. You had to, nearly everybody either studied Uta Hagen or Stanislavski, method acting or in the moment, and you watched movies and you watched the greats. To really be good at the future, you had to know where we came from. So you knew actors, you knew their movies. There were people, they were actors who became a star and a celebrity. Now everybody wants to be a celebrity, it seems like. They did nothing to get there. I studied and spent every dime I could in acting schools and classes, trying to develop and fine tune a skill. And nowadays people just want to be the actor. They don't want to spend that time. And I hope, when you hire experience, it's always better and it saves you money. I hope for a director to say, look, in every take, he's doing the exact same thing. So, when the editor gets it, it's easy. You start every scene with some type of action. So the editor, it's easier for them to turn and do things with your footage. Jeff Hamm, great guy, great editor. I love what he did with Meteor. I like what he does all the time, but he was very creative with Meteor. And again, that film, I will go to the rest of my life as having a huge part of me in it. But everybody did a part of that. But we really, that role comes from decades of me trying to fine tune and organize my craft.
I brought this up before on more than one occasion with whoever I'm speaking with here that um when I was a kid, I did want to become an actor, not anymore, but when I was a kid, I wanted to become an actor because I was amazed with the spectacle, like Hollywood, that sort of stuff. And as the years have gone by, my position on that has changed a great deal because one thing I've become more and more aware of, especially now as of late, where I've been doing more film reviews and being able to talk to people in the industry, in various facets as far as like comedians, musicians, and things of that nature. And the most consistent thing that I've come across when it comes to those that really want to do it and those that are doing it for all the wrong reasons is that those that really want to do it are going to do it no matter what. They're going to stick their neck out to follow through with their passion. And, whether they have a full time gig, that, whatever 4 hours they may have left in the day, they're going to put all their energy on their passion. Right. And, I think there's something about that and following with what you do you can't match it with anything else. Like, and I'll be honest, I'm not gonna say what it is for, but I mean, there are some things that I do on the side that don't really care for, but when I'm doing this, I invest everything that I've got, and I'm
And
not
it
trying to.
shows.
Well, I appreciate that, but
It
one of the
does.
things that I try to do, and I hate doing this here but I don't know anyone else who I can use an example here outside of myself, but one thing that I've always imagined how I would do this show here was that I want to be able to highlight um, the things that most people tend to overlook, which are the finer details. Is if people have if I've had people that have asked in the past, who have you spoken with in the industry? Well, I've talked to these guys, this director, this writer, this editor, so on. I've never heard these guys. Well, they've worked on these films, never heard of them. And I understand that perception. I really, really do. And it's nice to have. I'm not going to deny it and say that I don't want to have a conversation with Stallone, who's in my mind is my favorite actor of all time. Would I like to have a conversation with him? Sure, I would. But I think for me, it's more important to highlight on the things that people tend to overlook because when you have someone such as yourself who has a great deal of experience, but you have a experience in the industry where you have worked with high caliber talent, directors, writers, and actors, and so on. And then you work in another facet of the entertainment industry where I didn't even know it existed, up until I learned about it. And I didn't realize, the extent of entertainment and how far it goes outside of, my interest, which is film, television, music, comedy, whatever the case may be. But to see it in that, to see it from my perspective and understanding what it is you go through, that to me is interesting because if someone were one day come back and look at this conversation and say, and they may come across a movie that you have done and they hear this conversation take place here, and to learn that I had no idea that, not only did Robert Keith do this stuff, but I didn't even know that existed. I'm hoping that that would then spark their interest to delve into it further, to look into it, to understand the amount of responsibility that it takes to prepare for that, to work for that. Because one of the biggest gripes I've had, and I'm talking about everyone in general, as far as people who dismiss things, is that they look at something as it sucks, and then just kind of brush it off. And I think that's a huge, huge um, uh, disservice to do, not only for yourself as a person, but also for the people that worked hard on it. Because
Yeah.
if I look at something which I've done in the past, I'm not going to deny I'm above that, but I've done this in the past where I look at it was terrible, but then I go back and watch it again. I'm like, wait a minute, that was it's not good. I don't like it, but what they've done to get to that point is the part that I found the most intriguing, and that's something that I think is is important to understand. So when I have these conversations with yourself and whoever else I have on my show, the most important thing for me is that um I've said it before many times, but I think promoting movies nowadays is so far behind is because it's the same redundant questions over and over again. And it's a tell me what it's like working with Spielberg. Well, it was fantastic. He's a legend. Yeah, I already know that stuff. But tell me about the bad days you've had on set where you had to bust your ass to get to that part of the day where you have to put on this really important performance for this integral part of the scene. What did you have to do to prepare for that moment? But they're not going to talk about that. No, I don't think they'll get into that because you had diarrhea that day and you were just not, you didn't get enough sleep. no one wants to hear that stuff. That part to me is way more interesting, because then when I watch the scene, I'll remember this is what he had to go through to get that. That's amazing. And I think those are the things that people take away from the most, where if you don't know these things, you overlook them. And if you don't look for it, you're never going to know about it. And that's the biggest problem that I have with a lot of people, is that they don't care. I do, and I don't care that they don't care. I care, and I want to bring that to awareness for a lot of people. So, call it a mission if you want. I mean, I don't necessarily believe in like destiny and all. So I don't necessarily believe in that, but I do believe that it's important to point these things out, and you're never going to learn these things if you don't talk to anybody about this sort of stuff, to look into it, to ask these questions. And that's another thing I have a problem that I'll speak for myself, but there's another thing that I realized, that it's important to look into who you're speaking with here, to know what it is you want to ask them, to know what is what's already been asked of them, and find out the finer details to pull out that information that probably was delved into before but was overlooked. Because, well, so you worked with Spielberg, right? Yeah, so tell me about that. Yeah, okay, we can get to that part, but get to the part where he had a rough day the day before the audition, where he was not going to go to the audition because he was going to quit acting. And then all of a sudden something had happened where his girlfriend, his mother said, just go, or otherwise we're done, or whatever the case. It's something that changed that momentum for them. Was, all right, I'm going to go. And then all of a sudden it worked out, and that's all they want to hear. Yeah. So those important
social media.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is true to a point. I would say it is, social media definitely does a good job in just like, selling, and promoting sound bites, which are good to a point, but, you're not going to get enough information out of like, this amount of space. But if we have a conversation for about over 2 hours or whatever the case may be, there's so much more you can take from that. But is anyone going to listen? I think they should, whether if you like it or not, that's up to you. But, that to me is more important. So I went off on a tangent. I didn't mean to take that away from you here, but I mean, it's just.
No, I think you're right, Rob.
Yeah.
It's so easy to criticize others.
Right.
Instead of just stopping for a minute. We're making movies, and especially we were making movies through a COVID time. When they say cut, you're donning the mask.
Yeah.
And you're having to do that, and then wash your hands and make sure you don't touch anything. That's my cup. Don't touch it. We went through all of that on top of making a movie.
Right.
And movies are not easily made.
Right.
And you're talking about pressures and stuff. I am sure that not only Brett, but all directors, they're physically exhausted at the end of the day,
right,
trying to bring all those personalities and talents together and lead them on a journey that you want them to go on, to go over there with your storyline. It's mentally exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And this is, again, I'm coming from a position where I've never had that experience on a set to understand that in that capacity. But, I just come from the perspective of the observer who understands the hard work that's involved with it. But, again, like, but that's the thing with the general audience, of that they don't necessarily understand that, and understand that they won't care. I've talked to, David Michael, who was actually my first guest on the show, and he's someone that I think a lot of people who, they may look at his films, and I understand why they would look at his films, because he runs the Asylum that produced the Sharknado movies, and people will look at the films as being schlocky, sure, and I have my opinions on some of the films, but the point I'm getting at is that when you take the time to listen to him talk, you're going to realize that this guy has a lot of knowledge about how the system works. Yeah. And you're not going to know that if you just look at his film and say, oh, this movie sucks, and don't take the time to listen to him, where you realize, oh, wait a minute. So now there's more incentive for me, or at least for me, for wanting me to go check out his movies about what it took to get these actors. And they had 7 days to shoot it, and they only had X amount of money available to shoot that. And they understand that what they're making is not going to be for everybody. So there's a certain mindset that comes with that I think is so appealing to me, that I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I think I do, but sometimes I still haven't figured it out, where I don't understand what it is about that really gets my attention. And then I just want to dig deeper and deeper, and just like it's Inception, just layers upon layers of like understanding that process and the person's psyche to get to that point, that for some reason it just fascinates me. Which is why, like, when I'm talking to you, I'm kind of going all over the place with my questions here, but there's something you bring up, like just get to that, and then you bring
Yep.
something else up, get to that. It's it, because if I don't capture it, I'm afraid that I'm never going to go back to be able to capture
Yeah.
it again.
No.
So that's where my stance is on that here. But when you're having, I'm curious here with you, and forgive me if I'm if I'm bringing myself into this conversation here with you, but when you're having this conversation with me now, I'm always curious to hear. You're actually going to be the very person I'm going to be the very first person I'm going to be asking here, and I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are. So when you're having this conversation here with me, there's a part of me that when I'm listening to you talk and hearing you answer my questions, I always wonder what goes through the person's mind when that happens, because and the reason why I'm asking is just because I feel that as I'm talking to someone, I feel like there's something about the way that they are expressing themselves. I always wonder, are they, do they like the questions that I'm asking? And call it insecurity, call it whatever you want. I'm not saying to you directly, but it's just that I'm curious to hear what the person's thought process is, because something about, the way that when I'm looking into somebody, I feel like I just have to go deeper and deeper in the conversation with them. And I'm always curious to hear what their thoughts are when it comes to that sort of stuff. So again, if since I'm bringing myself in this conversation with you like this, I hope you don't mind, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are so far with the conversation, because to me it seems like you are rather invested, but I'm just curious if you don't mind with the question.
It's I don't know what I couldn't tell you what we talked about or what I said. Oh, this is two people having a conversation.
Right,
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm you ask a question, I ask you. We're having a discussion, whether we're sitting at the bar or at the coffee shop.
right,
We're just having a discussion.
right,
Is it right or wrong? Not only do I not know, but I don't care.
right.
We're just having a conversation.
I think that's the most honest answer I could probably get from somebody here. And that's the reason why I asked you, because I really do feel like that, you know, there's no, there's really no definitive response to a question like that, because, that's more or less how I felt about it here with you, where, I give you a response to something or I'm asking a question, but I'm not concerned about what you think of the questions, depending on the subject matter, of course. But I think it's really important for anyone who's watching this here to understand that it's you just don't know how the conversation will go. I mean, honestly, I didn't plan for this to get into this part of the conversation here, but a part of me is always curious as we delve into this further and further. And you're actually the first person that ever came across that thought. Just ask him that and see what he thinks. So I hope you don't mind.
Well,
Um,
you if you're if I'm worried about or how I can say this to gain something out of it or something, no, then I'm not listening and I'm not responding to you. Honestly, I don't know what you're going to ask next, so I've got to listen and pay attention so I know what you're saying.
right. Well, let me ask you something real quickly about your career. That there's a part of me that always want to know with actors, if when you're working on a set, did you ever have this preconceived notion about wanting to become an actor for the sake of the fame and for the rewards that come with that, or did you ever just strictly do it for the pure passion of it, knowing that if I don't make it as a marquee name actor, that doesn't matter, because I'm doing this here because I love the craft, I love this, so I don't care what I do as long as I'm doing it. What was that kind of your thought process?
I think in the early days, especially, I might have had a little of the jaded goal in
Mm,
mind. And that door closed. And then when it has opened up again and I've had this opportunity, all it did was solidify the dreams of a young man. And that was that I really like it. I really enjoy acting. It's a passion. It makes me feel good. If you don't like the character or if you don't like the way I portrayed it, I don't care. I love acting. I try to make each one better. I try to make each one different. And nowadays, I could care less if you made my day today by wanting to have a conversation with me.
Oh, really?
When
Wow.
I hear somebody say, I liked what you did in that, I liked what you did, then I accomplished my goal.
Hmm.
And that is enough. I don't need an award. I don't need, and I am a little long winded. And in trying to explain something simple, like if you go, why do you do this? I do it because I love it. And the goal has always been to make movies.
Right.
And that's it in a nutshell. I can explain all the many thousands of things that go through my mind, but that's it in a nutshell. I love what I do. I don't need fame. I don't want to. I want the opportunity to create magic on film.
Do you get a little starstruck when you? I mean, because you've worked with quite a few legendary figures in the industry, and I know at certain points you were definitely starstruck because you mentioned before you worked with Johnny Cash with in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. You
If
know,
that
and
doesn't affect you, and yeah, if you're not starstruck by Johnny Cash, you're not living.
well, I'm curious because when you work with these legendary figures, Walter Hill you worked with before, Mickey Rourke, William Forsythe, who is a legend in the industry as well too. But working with these icons in a lot of ways, do you still carry that mindset like, wow, I've got, these are the actors I work with, but having spent time with them after a while, did that kind of just go away and you realize, what, Johnny Cash is just another guy because here I am
No,
having a chit chat with him. We're talking about whatever. Nothing like that comes to
no,
mind.
it doesn't go away. Thank
Really?
goodness.
Okay.
No, even no. It's what a joy. I did a movie of the week in Nashville with Lonnie Anderson, Earl Holliman. There's another one. If you look at that cast, you no, and then we were on the Grand Ole Opry. So like I have pictures with Reba McEntire when we were all young and I was just as giddy as, I mean, that's Reba McEntire,
Yeah, yeah,
even though
yeah.
she's from Coleman, just up, I think she's from
She's from
Texas.
Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, man, that's what it's fun to get those jitters.
Interesting.
The first time I met Debbie Reynolds, I nearly died. Uh, um, uh,
But I mean, when you spend time with them though, do
I
they
got
show?
one. I got one for you.
Go on.
Starstruck, beyond belief. And again, yeah, lots of them. My father, I said, built airplanes and was in politics. We were in Los Angeles at the Air Force Ball, and Jimmy Stewart and his wife were the big celebs at that ball that year. And so we got because I'm the son of at that time, president of the Air Force Association, I got to hang out with Jimmy Stewart and his wife.
Really?
And not only that, I danced, his wife was a dance instructor before when she was young. She and I danced all evening. Now there's something that nobody knows about
Interesting.
me. I was quite a hoofer when I was young. I tapped, ballroom dance. I love swing dancing. In Texas, we have a thing called two-step, also the shuffle, and it's very
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
isolated to the Fort Worth area. And I love to shuffle, but I love the ballroom dance. I love Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, Sammy Davis Jr., the Rat Pack. If I could come back in another time, yeah, the Old West was fun and everything. And as much as I would love to work for Taylor Sheridan in any of his shows. The 40s, I love the way they dress. I mean, that was just what a unique time to live in. The big bands. I love big band music. I like all music, everything from bluegrass to classical. But yeah, I danced, and you look at all the people I've danced with. I danced with Debbie Reynolds, not professionally. We were at an event, and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to, so I went up and asked her to dance, and she danced with me.
Wow.
Can you imagine dancing with?
You actually got to dance with her. Interesting.
But yeah, and then I danced with Jimmy Stewart's wife, maybe 5, 6 dances that night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what
And
was she like though? And when you were
like a princess, like a queen.
okay,
She was just, and he danced with my mother because my dad
really?
was politicking. So Jimmy, when I was danced with Jimmy's wife, and she was royalty, and is he. And if you look at the pictures of us, uh, when I look at him, I was just completely blown away that is Jimmy Stewart because of such. All of his films you watch. Can you imagine trying to do a remake of It's a Wonderful Life?
Yeah.
That one, out of all the films that we've done, for better or worse, in remakes, that one no one's touched.
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. Same here. I agree with you on that.
Again, I could bore you about being around some of those people.
I would love to hear it.
And there's so many of them. And what's really fun is when they're absolutely genuine and fun to be around, and kind, and that's part of the allure is these people that are able to do that and still be a warm, kind individual that has nothing bad to say about anybody, whether they, that's just, they're there to bring, they're happy people.
Well, so, but again, when you, because again, you've come from a period where you have literally been able to see celebrities from a very young age, and a lot of them at their height of their career, and then as the years have gone by, you've been able to sift through the industry where you have seen all all these high caliber actors do all their walks of their lives, or they're when they're at their apex or at the tail end or whatever the case may be. But you have been able to have interactions with them to the point where I think I heard you say at one point, if I'm wrong, let me know, that I think Johnny Cash had invited you to come back to work with him to some capacity. I think out in Jamaica, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
You were able to
he was
go.
always inviting me to come to Jamaica, and I couldn't afford it anyway at that time. Yeah, but he was, I mean, and the second episode we did together, June was actually on, so we had June and Johnny there. But that was just magical.
Right, right. But I mean, again, that's the thing. Like that, you've had these opportunities to have these one-on-one moments with these people, with Johnny, and and several of these other actors as well, too, musicians and so on. That I think most people don't know about. And I mean, obviously, you're sharing it now, but the fact you've been able to have that nice private moment where you have a really nice, genuine time with them, you got to see, I would imagine, a side of the personality that probably most people will never get a chance to be exposed to.
True.
Because none of that, they're not surrounded with all the stress that comes with the attention that they bring, considering their background. So when you're there watching them and conversing with them, there's there's something changed along the way for you about how you look at, in this case, I hate to use the word, but celebrities, when you're talking with them and you're realizing, wait a minute, that person that I envision in my mind is actually a real life person. Why, should I be looking in that way? I mean, it might be a silly question to ask, but I'm not sure if that's something that may have crossed your mind.
It is, but I got a story for you. Another one that nobody knows about it except my wife. So one day I was getting on a plane out of Dallas Fort Worth going to LAX, and I got on. And the reason I know this story so much is I was watching one of her movies last night. It's the third time I've watched it, and again, it's one of it'll all come together. So I get on, and I got bumped to first class because I fly all the time. I got bumped. I did not pay for a first class ticket. And I know back then I knew everybody. It seemed like at American Airlines. And I go in and I sit down, and there's this very attractive African-American woman. And I was making, 2-3 episodic TVs a year. It seemed like that was a good year. It's a slow business unless you're unless you hit it off big. And I'm glad it's happened the way it did. That's another story. And so I didn't really have anything to do with her. I was in first class. Again, I was bumped. I didn't buy the ticket. And so this woman she was just as sincere and real. And she's wanting to talk. And I'm going, oh God, I hope she's not one of these that's going to talk the whole way. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so, and she goes, well, where do you live here? And I go, yeah, no, I live in LA. I was just here visiting my mom. Oh yeah. And what do you do out there? I probably said something stupid. Like I'm at that particular time, I'm an actor. Again, if I could have gotten 3 decent parts a year, it was a great year in that 30 years. Because some of those years you got 1, maybe 2 parts. And so we're flying now and they're talking to us and stuff. And I said, well, what's your name? Because she was so sweet, so sincere, asking me only questions about me. So I said, well, what's your name? And she says, or I said, what do you do? Where do you live? And I don't remember where she said. And I said, what do you do? And she says, I'm an actress. And I said, oh, really? And she goes, yeah. And I'm doing this, that, and the other. And I thought, really? I go, what's your name? She says, Queen Latifah.
Holy shit.
Rob, you have no, if I could have just, if they could have hit a button and just let me off the plane. Of course, that Queen Latifah and the one that I watched last night, I'm not going to think of she has a winter movie with an A-list cast where she's a woman that is wrongly diagnosed that she's going to die within 3 weeks.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
Wrongful in.
The name escapes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
I've watched it 3 times in the last 2 weeks, just because she, on camera, she is so beautiful, and real. That's the way she was, and that's the way I remember her. Needless to say, the rest of that journey, I listened most of the time from then. It's a good example. Don't tell people, keep your mouth closed, and people won't know what you don't know.
Right.
And then over the years, I've watched her career it's never ending. Yeah. And when you see her on television, I don't think she's aged a single day. And that
she's very beautiful.
Well, I know how long it's been since my mother's been deceased. So that had to have been over 20 years ago.
So she was probably doing the TV show back in the day, Living Single, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. But God, was she nice and gracious and charming and witty and everything. And she still is today. I wished I knew her. There's one for you for the books that she wouldn't know who I was from anybody, but she made an impact on me because she was so real. She was a human being on that plane, and she enlightened my life by what she did.
Well, and that's the thing too about, this whole celebrity aspect, because I mean, this is why I was asking you about it, because, like I said before, you have these moments where you really get to see these actors, celebrities, if for lack of a better term, when they're letting their guard down, because you're getting to see a side of them that most of the public will never get to see, at least in that capacity, where if you remove all their accomplishment, would anyone take notice of them again, just by first glance? Probably not. So the fact that you've been able to see them at a point in their life where they're not surrounded by all the chaos that comes with the amount of work that they've done, but you got to see them in those isolated moments. I think you have an insight and a perspective that I think is very valuable, that when you share these stories, especially one about Queen Latifah, that she's asking you questions. I can't imagine, that honestly, that would never been my first thought process, that she's going to ask you, hey, tell me where you're from. How, what are you doing out there? What do you do? Like, wanting to get to know you as a person. And then from your perspective, like, leave me alone. But then the conversation progressed It was just her asking questions about you. These are the stories that we don't necessarily hear about, these moments with these actors and musicians and so on. And and that's one reason why I have my perception has changed a great deal about the fame and the glory that comes with acting, because I don't think that's a really a realistic goal to accomplish, because I've come across quite a few people now that have worked for years in the industry, and as far as on face value, oh, you've been in these movies, yeah, so you've done very well. Not necessarily. It's all about finding the next gig, unless you're in those top tier actors, which are very, very slim, with Tom Cruise, Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, where these things are being given to you and it's up to you to say yes or no. Then everyone else below that is pretty much just grinding out the next work, and that's the hardest part for people to understand, that it doesn't come as easy. And even there was one actor, I forgot who his name was, but he was on the Cosby Show, and there's this whole thing about him working at Trader Joe's, and they think he's failed miserably because he's working at Trader Joe's. Like, no, I'm still acting. It's just that I need a job in between the acting gigs, because acting doesn't come as easy for me as it does for other people, because only a handful of that large ocean of actors, handful of them are giving these parts. So that's the realistic aspect of the industry that I think people don't realize exists. So just because you're on a successful TV show, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden life is great and you're happy because you made millions of dollars. I've met quite a few people who have not had the amount of money that other people have accomplished, but yet somehow they seem much more happy because they're following through with their passion, and that is what's important to them. So for me, that's basically the vibe that I'm getting off of you here. But I mean, again, I think that that's an important detail to highlight here, because that's something that I think most people tend to forget and overlook, because they dismiss the work and they disregard the amount of work that's required to accomplish this film and music, or whatever the case may be. I understand things are subjective, but I'm kind of going off on a tangent. But I think you understand. I think I understand where I'm coming from with this here.
You, Rob, do you remember a name, Ed Lauter?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Okay, Eddie, another one of the miracles of my life. I had the opportunity to be around him and become a dear friend of his, all the way till he passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. Ed Lauter's name, you look him up, I don't know, he's done more movies than and everybody go, oh yeah, that's Ed, that I know him, but they don't know his name. Eddie went through Hollywood. I mean, he was best friends with Dean, or good friends with Dean Martin, Lee Marvin. I mean, he ran with the top of the industry for years, and nobody knew him. I mean, he was just a character actor that did movies after movie after movie after movie, all the way through Secretariat. He was the agent for I believe the jockey in Secretariat. He was in the second or third King Kong movie. Eddie but he was larger than life off screen. He was the life of the party. When you were around Eddie, things were better. And he could do impersonations. He could sing. He had a little soft shoe. And I got to spend many a day with Ed. And see, most people would never know that about Eddie, but he was one. His heart was bigger than the state of Texas. A loving, wonderful man.
It's funny. I saw Secretariat. No, I think I'm confusing it with Seabiscuit. My apologies. That's not the one with Tobey Maguire, right? Secretariat. Is that the same film that I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. He was I was trying to remember his face now. And you see, it was in the last King Kong movie.
I look him up, and now somebody, and I got to work with him in small roles.
Okay.
But he was in what was Nightclub. Everybody liked it. Nightclub. It was an independent film.
Okay.
I love doing independent films. You know, we haven't really touched on that, but one of the neat things about doing independent films is you have the opportunity to do things that you would never be able to do
Right.
with the studio structure. And I think there's a certainly an enticing um, look for and feel for that.
Do you feel like when you're working on a bigger production like like a mainstream studio film, is do you think that the developing the story, the character, because there's I wouldn't say very few, there's quite a few mainstream films that do that very well, but it almost seems like there's always a certain amount of hurdles you have to go through to be able to keep certain character traits or certain story beats or whatever the case may be. Whereas in independent movies, majority of the ones I've come across have always been pretty consistent when it comes to telling the story that way you want to tell, that may be risky, and not necessarily risky as like people might. I'm not referring to like the violence or the humor, but more about
I know
risky as
exactly
in
what yeah.
taking, okay. So, but for you, do you think that's a detriment to the process, or is this another aspect of you as a filmmaker or as a filmmaker in general, or even an actor? Well, let's see what other ways we can go about and exercise those areas to be able to flesh out another part of the story that they want us to focus more on rather than this particular beat here and there. So do you feel like that's something that is a detriment if you go down that route, or it's just another
No,
exercise?
no, I think it's you know, um, the easiest way for me to say that, look back at that group of men that were trying to take Hollywood over, and they were shooting their independent films. The Coppola, the Spielbergs,
Yeah.
they all had their little rat pack. And I mean, you look at those first movies they were doing, and the whole Spielberg story about getting off the tour tram and going in, putting his name on the door, and all. You listen to all those stories, and no, they were making independent films back then.
Right.
That's how they made George Lucas. That's how it was guerrilla filmmaking that led to them changing the world.
Do
So
you
if you see, if in next year, the year after, if you hear Brett's doing a major film, no, yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, I believe
Absolutely.
that too. You
And
know,
Tiffany's a great producer. How often are you going to have a chance to know the producer? Most people never meet or even know what the producer does.
right.
And when you're doing the indie style, Tiffany's a great producer. She's fun to, she's very nice, pleasant. Again, you want to do good for her because she makes you want to be part of the process and be there.
When I was talking to Brett, he was telling me one of the most important things, which I do believe, considering with the amount of people that I've spoken with here, that it's always really good to have a good producer on set, because you want someone that's going to be able to alleviate a lot of a lot of with the amount of work that's also involved as a director that people will go to, but having someone out there to kind of just delegate certain things and be able to handle certain things, so that way you as a director could handle that. Um, Apart from that, though, what's from your perspective is another important key factor when it comes to making films that you believe will become a successful, at least production, when it comes to the filmmaking process. What's that for you that comes to mind?
That core group that's going to be there on set
Mm,
is so critical, and that those personalities get along. Because if we take 2 blocks of ice and put them out on the concrete tomorrow, they're going to melt
right.
differently. None of us are the same. As much as you and I agree, I'm sure we can find something we don't agree
Right.
on, and that's fun. And I'll discuss and challenge you all day long. But on the set, especially when you're talking about a big set, and who knows what it is now. It used to be like $3,000 a minute. Um, and then nowadays it's probably $25,000 a minute finished product on the screen. But when you've got that, you don't have time for any bullshit.
Right.
It's that core making this happen. These independent filmmakers, Brett, you have to know your dialogue. You have to deliver upon request immediately. So does the lighting department. So does the sound department. So does the DP. All those people have to be ready and go now. There's none of this hurry up. There are all this waiting and then, oh no, we'll get that next shot up in about an hour. No, we're going to get we're moving scenes. The next scene will take place. We'll be ready for a rehearsal in 4 minutes. We won't get over there. That we'll be there. Let's go. Come on. Let's go, everybody. Let's go. Round them up. But the process in the indie style, it's invigorating. It's fun.
Right. What's your take on the short shooting schedule with Brett? Because in Brett's films mostly are about a week or a little bit over a week in most cases. Do you prefer that fast pacedness of working on the set, or do you prefer having more time to work on, developing or getting into the part or preparing for setting up the shots or whatever the case may be? Do you have that preference as far as how you like to go about it, or you just whatever needs to be done, I'm just going to do it no matter what it is? So, I mean, just curious to hear what your thoughts are.
The latter, yes, but what I think about the doing it that fast, Rob, it is insane. The fact that I remember, again, I got to do some of those movies years ago, and it was a 6 to 8 week shoot. 6 to 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And they were doing 2 pages a day, and people were stressed out because we did 2 pages today, did 2.5 yesterday. And then there was a company come along, and they started doing a 21-day filming, and they changed pretty much the way direct to video, skipping the studios. And that was brand new. Nobody ever heard of it. You can't do a movie in 21 days. Are you out of your mind? And they would do 12 of them a year. So they had 3 different crews. And so you would either be in pre-production, production, or post. So they furnished a film to their distribution every 90 days. But then it was every month. They furnished their distributor.
You're not talking about Roger Corman, are you?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever, and I think I did 2 of their films, and we thought that was fast. I mean, we were doing, 4 or 5 pages a day, and we thought that was fast. 1 take, And Tommy tried to tell me what I was about to get into, and fortunately, I had lots of time to learn my dialogue, and I was ready from day one. But we're going to do 10 pages in a day,
yeah.
12 pages a day. It'll make you go up about 3 octaves. It is. But the first one was kind of wow. And then by 3 films into working with Brett, no, you knew what to expect. You prepared for it. You went in there and you wanted to make him proud and deliver a memorable role.
Do you have, when you actually went through that experience the very first time, Tom Zimrod had given you heads up, hey, it's going to be this amount of time, we make sure you're on point. But once you were actually on set, did anything change for you? Like, okay, so maybe I over prepared, or I should have just prepared more on this rather than that. Like, did anything like that come along the way when you first started working with Brett on the film for Rodeo Thief that you probably didn't consider? Okay.
No, it was so good to be on a set again. And the character was fun. And again, working opposite Tom Holland was great. And seeing how they did this in such a short period of time. The only bad thing about it was that's a wrap came a lot sooner and it was done. I mean, it was done, and you go, wait, no.
Right.
I think Rodeo Thief was 6 or 7 days. Yeah,
Really?
first day,
Oh,
the first day, man, we just, it was
interesting.
so fast.
What? So I'm curious about the part for Meteor that you were given. So did Brett give you a heads up about, hey, I'm writing a movie, and I'm considering you for this part for this character here, or was it one of those things where he worked on it and then all of a sudden, maybe a month or so out, hey, I got a script. We're going to be shooting in about a month's time. Are you interested in taking the part? Read the script, let me know what you think, and then let me know by tomorrow. Was it something along those lines, or were you fully aware of it ahead of time before it led up to the production?
Combination of those two.
Okay.
It was, would you be interested in doing a lead? And then he says, then we were shooting one of the other ones. He says, I'm ready to send you the script and see what you think. I said, okay. And I don't think we didn't do, what do you think? Will you accept it? Or it was just, yeah. I trust Brett completely. And when he said, here's the script, I want you to do it. Got it. Doing it.
Interesting.
That's your puppy?
That's my dog.
We didn't even talk about dogs, Rob. We're going to have to do this again, just to talk about the animals.
Yeah, he was actually laying in the bed here for a bit, and then my wife is here, and we
We're locked up.
we have 3 dogs and a lovebird here in the house.
Woo!
Were you able to hear it? Because I thought I saw the connection just dropped there.
Yeah, it dropped for a minute, but yeah, you said you had 3 dogs and a lovebird.
Yeah, you know what a lovebird is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we have a lovebird here, which we named. Oh, that's right. You've seen my pictures, of course. I forget that. Yeah, we named him Chick, and actually my sister named him that. And then we ended up keeping him. But yeah, so we have 3. So I have a kid, 3 dogs, a lovebird, and a wife. My wife is just chiming in. A wife, yeah. And
yeah, and a wife, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like it's interesting. It's not. I think people get the perception when I tell them, yeah, I got 3 dogs and a bird, and like, what? It's a madhouse. Like, no, it's the furthest from that. Like, these guys are. I mean, I love my dogs, but they're lazy, and I love lazy animals. I don't like too crazy animals, to be completely frank. But yeah, I think out of the wildest out of all of them, it's my bird. He's the one that flies everywhere, shits everywhere, chews on everything, eats everything. I'm eating my food, and he's like flying it. Like, come on, man, leave me alone. Let me just eat my food, and you can have the leftovers. But nope, he chimes in. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I think it surprises people when I tell them that my dogs are actually pretty calm, and there is no major chaos that happens in the house unless someone rings the doorbell. And that's a whole different story. So, but yeah, I want to close off by saying something here with you about this conversation. This was something that I was very much looking forward to here because I'm always very curious about hearing, your story, and I feel like we got to the tip of the iceberg about what it is you've actually experienced in life and what you've experienced with your career that I find extremely fascinating. I don't know if you want to just close off with anything you may want to say that for anyone that's watching, listening here, for what we both have gotten out of this here.
How humble I am to have this wonderful opportunity of this door that meant so much to me that I allowed that growing up and having income coming in and everything, close that door. And now that door is back open and I have this opportunity again, and I'm very humbled by it. And I'm so excited for the next one, and hopefully the next one and the next one. But it's been a great ride.
I agree, man, and I'm very thankful that if Brett had not reached out to me, I don't know if I would have heard of Rodeo Thief or Buckskin and all these other films, because if it wasn't for him reaching out to me, who knows if we would have had this conversation. So I'm very grateful that Brett had done that, and then from there I became fans of the people he's worked with to the point where I've had these opportunities to speak with you all in this respect here. And I think that's something that I cherish it very, very much, and I really do mean when I say that. So I'm extremely grateful that you've given me the time out of your day to speak with me about this. So if anything, the honor was mine for me to converse with you. It really was, and
Reminds
it was always something that I had imagined that would be where us to go. We were going to go all over the place, and I'm glad that we did. And I think that's the beauty of a conversation. You just don't know what you're going to be expecting. So,
True.
you have been a wonderful storyteller, and I would love to do this with you again down the line for us to pick up from where we last left off. Hopefully one day in person as well too, because I really would love to meet with everybody that I've gotten on the show, to
Yeah.
converse with them in person and have a drink of some sort. But anyways, I'm gonna leave you to it here. But I can't thank you enough for everything you've done here and speaking with me, because this has been a very, very fun conversation with me, and I've learned a lot more than I anticipated, which is what I always look out for. So, if anything, thank you again for all that.
Thank you, Rob.